All right, we're going to try something here. I don't really know how this is going to go, but it's, why am I nervous? This is bullshit. Okay, so this side of the room, you're beep. And this side of the room, you're bop. Okay, I had one of my coworkers ask me, like, what should I do on this thing? And then beep, beep, bop, bop, right? And she asked me to spell it. So when I point at you, you say beep. When I point at you, you say bop. Are you guys ready? Okay, are you ready? Okay, are you ready? Yes. Thank you. Ready? Beep, bop, beep, beep, bop, beep, 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 bop, bop, beep, bop, beep. Okay, that has nothing to do with my presentation. This is a link that you might want. Any resource, person, thing, project I talk about will be, I use Pinboard, will be in here. So I will show this at the end of the presentation. Please don't stress about getting down names or frameworks or any of that kind of stuff. I've already done the work for you. Okay? Can I start off with a story? I like stories. Who likes stories? Okay. You guys are a little quiet. I'm going to have to work on this, ain't I? Okay. Creative technologist. How many people have heard this term? Right? How many people consider themselves or call themselves this term? Right? So, creative technologist, that's how I entered the industry. I was considered a creative technologist. No one really knew what that meant, but that's what I was called, right? So, about a year ago, I got this email, hey, Stacy, we're filming something in New York. Will you come down to New York and be part of this program that's going to be, on the Learning Channel? And it's about these girls working on startups, and we want you to come in as a creative technologist. So I was like, cool, yeah, sure, okay. Oh, it's going to be on TV. Beep, beep, beep. Hell no, I don't want to be on TV, right? Ended up getting suckered into it. But the funny thing is I get there, and they have these scripts that you're supposed to read, right? So the whole reality TV thing, yeah, not so much. And they're like, okay, we need to fill in this part to explain to the audience what a creative technologist is. And I was like, cool, okay, where's the script? And they're like, well, you're going to have to write the script. And I was like, huh? And then I realized, oh, okay, they didn't know what a creative technologist was. So I looked at one person, nope. I looked at the other, I don't know, right? I looked over to some of the other people that were helping me out. They just looking around, not wanting to talk about it. And suddenly this happened to me. Oh, it's you. You're the creative technologist. You need to come up with it. And I'm just like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. And everyone's like, yep, totally in agreement. Yeah, 100%. And out I pop. I'm the creative technologist, right? And it kind of makes a statement a little bit about where I work a little bit, or about technology, I would say, is that when you say technology, everyone's on board. When you put creative in front of it, they don't understand how those two go together, right? And that's kind of part of my job on a day-to-day basis right now. And I realize that creative technologist is actually kind of a term that comes from more agency type of work, right? Because you're building things that are fun and engaging and sometimes useless and have a shelf period of 3 weeks, and then you get sad because you never see it again and it never looks the same, and it's a little bit of one of those terms. And I realized that when we talked about it internally, that they saw creative as art, right? And that art is not technology, it's not equal. You can't have those things, be side by side or work together like that. That's not how it's going to go. And I realized that people around me thought that technology is not creative, right? And I don't know about you all, but 3 a.m., bashing that bug, and who knows what solution you come up with, but it's a creative one. And that if someone adds a line of code, it's not going to be so creative anymore, right? So technology is creative. And so, I have that moment where I just look around and I just can't believe what's going on. And it makes me a little upset, obviously. Sometimes I just want to cry, but then I find my piece of food and I'm really good because I just eat all my emotions. But mostly I just ignore what people think or do or what they want to apply to what I'm doing. And I just keep going straight ahead on that path, and sometimes failing, sometimes picking myself up, right? So I wanted to start a little bit with that story so I can give you a kind of sense of where I'm coming from. About a year ago, I dev'd almost 80% of the time, and now I'm probably deving about 50% of the time, and that makes me sad. I would like to, I find code as enablement. The minute that you can actually take code and you can write something with it, you can make something happen. Might be just, something stupid that happens in the browser that brings you joy, or maybe you change someone's life. But for me, code is just that integral part of it. And so now I run a makerspace in Vancouver. That's what people think I do on a day-to-day basis. I just manage a makerspace. But I actually do quite a bit more than that. And I have to work with engineers in the ecosystem to kind of get them to think in different ways, right? And so some of you have seen this before. Still my favorite thing of all time, right? I want her to be my boss. You look at the law of the instrument, and has anyone heard of this term? Okay, oh, good. So if nothing happens in this presentation, you learned this. Check mark. Sweet, done. So it's, I suppose it's tempting if the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything as if it were a nail, just in case, you wanted me to read that for you. It's kind of the idea of that, you're over-reliant on a tool, right? So I work with a lot of people, and I've found this in my own life, where you become over-reliant on one piece of software or one tool. I loved Flash and ActionScript back in the day. You can boo me all you want. I'll take you on later one by one, right? Just bring it. And for me, there was a period of time where I realized that I was over-reliant on that particular ecosystem, and I branched out. I learned web tech. I embraced all sorts of other things. I had a day the other day at the office where I did Python, C#, JavaScript, a little bit of C++, and there was Lua all in the mix in one day, and I thought pretty much my head was going to explode, right? But the idea of kind of opening yourself up to other ecosystems, whatever they might be, when you're programming, so you're not over-relying on that tool, so you're not always going to force what you know to be the solution, right? And at the end of the day, when you're a developer or designer, you're just trying to get to that right solution. So we look at these kind of things, and I kind of figure out, how do you pick yourself up, right? And how do you not be scared of these kind of things? Right? And how do you surprise yourself and others when you learn new things? And so my job there very much is to stoke the technical curiosity of the engineers. And sometimes this means that I have to get them to play nice, right? Learn something new, pick up something they might be out of their comfort zone, even if they don't want to, right? And then I always show this picture now every single time because this is something that started with code, where I started with processing, brought in a picture of Bill Gates. He was coming to our office, and, ended in a very different way, ended in fabrication. So started with code, but ended in fabrication, and went through all those kind of processes. So for me, this picture, I did get to talk to him. It was awkward. I'll tell you the story another time. That's what I kind of bring on a day-to-day basis, not only to the engineers that I work with, but also just to the ecosystem. How can we think and approach things differently? And I learned this year that it's a lot about sometimes people need to learn things for themselves, right? Even if you know how to do it. So I'm going to show you a piece of work that we kind of worked on for the last 6 months. There was a team of 8 people. I'm going to start off by showing you work, and then I'm going to go into things that you could be exploring for yourself. You guys ready? You want to see what? Yeah, no, I like clapping. If you clap really loud, you know that I end up dancing to it. So just putting that out there. All right. So this is something that we worked on with a bunch of different people. It's quite a long video, but I'll just let it roll and I'll shut up. You can clap at that too.
In the early years, it was always just my dad was drawing, we would draw. When I went to high school, I continued to just draw the entire time. My workbooks, where I was supposed to be writing notes, were just all sketches. So drawing has just been something that I have done my whole life. I knew that the Microsoft Garage had a lot of really unique and interesting kind of tools and stuff that I was told would be at my disposal. And I met Stacy, and Stacy runs the garage. I threw some ideas at her, and she threw some back at me. Here I was given this opportunity to work with a bunch of things that I had never done before. The things that stuck out to me were 3D printing, which is something I hadn't utilized before in my practice. Stacy was quite interested in robotics. And then the third thing was Microsoft's HoloLens.
The amazing thing is taking a fine artist and curating and showing them what's possible with another tool, which is just technology. That, to me, is just amazing in itself, because he might now look at his work and think about it just a little bit differently. You know, for the garage, it's not only just about what we can do and what we're capable and how we can enable people, but it's also just about where the people take it, because that's the most important part of that.
So a transformation mask is essentially a larger mask that depicts a traditional crest figure that can then mechanically be pulled open with a string and reveal something else inside. So there's that, here's a bird, and then bam, it transforms into something else. And it's very theatrical. So the transformation mask is built on the HoloLens. And so when you put this transformation mask on, it transforms physically, but also the viewer is then allowed to access a world through the HoloLens that is inside the mask.
I think the collaboration is incredibly unique, and it leverages all of the strengths that we have both as a company here at Microsoft and as a team and a collection of artists, designers, programmers, but also as a community in Vancouver and, you know, connecting with history in a very incredible way and, in fact, generating history for people to think about what the future could be like.
Using HoloLens as part of an art piece is pretty cool. Like, of course, there's always the artistic component of a HoloLens experience, but it in itself being part of an art piece is new. And also the communication with the hardware, with the other hardware, not just the HoloLens. The Bluetooth communication between the HoloLens and the Arduino, getting the mask to open and close on command and synchronizing visual and audio effects between the HoloLens experience and the physical mask is pretty new. I don't know if anything's like that has been done before.
So usually when you have it open, it's Raven, you know, for instance, opening up to a portrait mask, which would be a human face. But in this case, the human face will be that of the viewer, and the viewer will be fitted with the HoloLens. And so you get this like transformation from bird into human, but the human is not, they're like human 2.0. That human is also transforming, that human is also evolving.
Someone gets to go experience something inside that, and they get to have a complete audio-visual experience. The animal sound starts very normal at first, but then it transforms into this kind of cyborg, electronic, kind of weird screeching sound, representing it turning into a cyborg.
Extremely exciting for me from a technical point of view, but it was quite eye-opening when I was talking to Sean about the form and shape that he wanted to include in that, and the need from a cultural point of view of the types of shapes and forms. So there was a technical challenge there as well to try and match that form and make sure that it's true to tradition.
I think it expanded skill sets we already had, and you got to think about things in a different way when you're considering 3D printing. I think at this point we use pretty much every tool we have in the garage. Great exposure to the garage for myself, and it's something that's been on my bucket list to have a piece that I worked on in the Vancouver Art Gallery, so here we are, check mark.
In the world today, Microsoft today is at, I think, the point of the spear where we are digitally transforming our businesses, the way we work, and how we function in life. And this mask that has its origins, way before anything was ever digital, to be called the transformation mask, and to be here working with Sean, who brings a part of the past and we bring a part of the future, and together we're transforming art.
I just hope that the viewer has an interesting experience, and I hope that that viewer may look at that experience and then hopefully relate it to a more traditional experience, or even just open up their mind in terms of what experiencing our culture might feel like. I've always been about, let's evolve this, find new ways to tell our stories. In order to tell our stories now, we have to compete with television. We have to compete with things like HoloLens. And so instead of competing with it, I'm encompassing it, and I'm using those technologies to tell the stories.
That item had, oh yeah, you can clap if you want. It was a hard project because honestly, I just enabled it. I didn't really work on it. And if you've ever been in that position where you want to work on something so badly, but you have to be hands-off, it's really painful. So the team that worked on it, about 8 people, that has over 300 and something hours of 3D printing and uses every technology you can probably imagine. My favorite part is, like, I don't think that's what you expect to come out of Microsoft, right? Yes. So we don't need to watch it again. So let's segue into creative JavaScript, right? And let's talk about 3 areas that I think kind of focuses on what I've been exploring for the last little bit. So AI and blah, 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 right? Every buzz term you can put in there. 3D for everyone and IoT. And so when we look at AI, AI is a big, all-encompassing term, and we've had it for a while. Microsoft just announced something about, like, quantum computing. It's coming. It's freaky, right? So, like, all these things that we've heard about, it's just we're on the cusp of it. And so when we think about AI, it's just that intelligent agent that can go around and make decisions based on inputs and outputs, right? But sometimes when we think about AI and we think about working with it, we start here, right? Because you're struggling, the learning curve is immense. And you get a certain part, you can get up part of that learning curve, and then the next thing you know, you need something that comes and takes you along, right? And so when we're working with AI and JavaScript, there's a lot of opportunities. When you think about AI, there's kind of general AI, which I don't think we truly have, more like this scenario, right? Can do everything and anything for you, predict your needs. And then we also have, like, narrow AI, which is more the focus things, computer vision, natural language processing, those kind of things. And if we look at it in general, you have AI, you have machine learning, and then deep learning. Who's heard of all these terms, right? Who's confident that they can have a very good discussion and differentiate between all these terms? Because I'm not. But, to kind of give you a sense of the differences between them, machine learning is that idea that you're going to give it a whole bunch of data, and it's just going to start, plowing through that data. You're going to give it some algorithms or something to look for, and then it's just going to use those things to predict results in the future. That's a very big generalization, right? And probably somewhat incorrect if you're a hardcore machine learning person right now. Deep learning, when people think about deep learning, they often say neural networks, right? But really, deep learning is that idea is it's machine learning with a whole bunch of layers. And so you have all these little nodes, and each of these little nodes takes that input and they evaluate something in particular, right? And so then they start to, give their feedback based on what they analyze for that node in particular, and they have weights and all sorts of stuff like that. So deep learning is pretty powerful because you're now moving past the idea of just looking at data. You're allowing it to be, trainable and train and those kind of things. When we look at AI, the democratization of AI, that just rolls off the tongue, right? Democratization of AI. You'll hear this term. And this kind of means that AI for everyone. Everyone can use AI in these, day and age. Has anyone used any kind of AI in their projects? Right? AI are chatbots. They're face recognition, right? Natural language processing. And all this stuff right now is available to you through APIs. Google has them, Microsoft has them, IBM has them, right? And so when you look at the idea of, like, can I tell, emotion or, like, what I look like as a baby or what my, those kind of things, that's all available to you. It's been democratized. It's just an API for you. The other interesting thing right now for JavaScript developers in particular is that all of this stuff has been democratized to hardware. So now you have compute sticks for AI. You don't need a big stack of computers like we're used to thinking in the past. It's a compute stick. You can run TensorFlow on your Raspberry Pi, right? $40. You've got a devoted computer just for that. So it is one of those interesting areas. We did a project in the garage where a group of these guys took the foosball table and they did deep learning on the foosball table. They constantly watched to see how people were playing with it. And they built a hardware solution that would play the other side and would train against you, right? So the more you played it, the better it got. They didn't know deep learning. They didn't know electronics. They really didn't know electronics. But they got super far with it, right? And so when we look at some of these AI experiments, there's a bunch of really interesting ones on the web right now. 3D face construction from a single image. So you can feed it your image, and it will extract a 3D representation of it, which you can then download and use, right? So usually in the past, you would have to have multiple, images, side, 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 front, front, whatever. Now it's just one image, and they're doing a fairly good job of extracting it. There's Adobe just posted an example where they can apply a style, right? Very, very easily. And so you're starting to see these style transfers happening a lot. AI in JavaScript, there's, Flappy Bird. Does everyone remember Flappy Bird? The game that we didn't know how it did it, but it did it, right? We're like, what's the key to success? I have no idea. Flappy Bird, right? Flappy Bird using AI, right? So there's an example that you can look at all the code there. If you look at AI in JavaScript, you'll see a lot of stuff put out by Google that's super interesting with their AI experiments. And landlines, this is a really great example. It's by Zach Lieberman. And on a group, actually, the Google Creative Lab, where you draw a line, and then it'll pull up kind of like a region or topology based on that line. And so now you're looking at these things in a very different way, right? The interesting thing about this project, it's all open source. You can take a look at exactly how they did it. It's all in the browser, right? And that's one of the myths that they say is JavaScript's not fast enough to be doing AI or machine learning or deep learning. And there's been a lot of arguments about it's getting there way quicker, right? Pardon me. I'll just cough for the rest of the preso. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. And then another example is WebGazer.js. Has anyone tried this? It actually maps your gaze in the browser. Super creepy, right? But imagine if you map the gaze in the browser and now you started to use a couple of the other APIs and you had a physical object that's now like a clown that's moving everywhere that you move, right? Or looking where you're looking, creepy, right? So there's a bunch of JavaScript libraries for AI. And they range the gamut of how recent they are, how much they're maintained. If you look at, is it ConvNet.js? That one's actually done by the guy who's head of AI at Tesla, right? He used to be at Stanford, and that was kind of his project. Recurrent, synaptic, all of these deep learn.js. So if you want to get into working with TensorFlow, there's deep learn.js. There's all of these libraries that are available for you to go and play with. You go to the GitHub, half of them have the examples in the browser. And you can start to see how they might apply to what you want to be doing in that sense, or how it could, even performance, how it could work. 3D for everyone is another area that we focus a lot on, right? And 3D, I don't know. How many of you work in 3D? Man, I get I get the basic, X, Y, but once you add that depth element, I don't know what it is, but I'm spatially challenged, right? I have a hard time kind of working in that space. And so when you think of 3D for everyone, that's a variety of things. That's devices, that's the browser, right? Has anyone had this experience? I was walking by the Microsoft store, and this kid was playing a VR game, and I just saw the attendant, because there's always got to be an attendant, just holding the kid by the shirt, because the kid was all over the place, and he's just super cash. You could have handed him a cigarette, he'd done that his whole life, just, So if we look at even VR or AR, MR, all those technologies, that's a huge thing right now. Some people call it, the modern workplace, and what can we do in these spaces? And so there's Paul Milgram. He has this reality-virtuality continuum. Whew. I don't think I screwed that up, but there's still time. That's not a space continuum, right? Okay. It's more along the lines of, you have reality, so Bob Ross, right? Great Halloween costume if you need one, okay? And then you have, on the other side, virtual reality. So this would be, something that you did in Tilt Brush. And then you have augmented reality, which is huge right now, like completely, and it's been around for a while. Pokemon did not make it up. It was not a result of Pokemon Go. It's been around for a while. We used to have it in Flash with like FlarKit. And then, I heard yep. And then you have augmented virtuality, right? So the difference being for some of these is you're augmenting, heads up or hands-free heads-up display with augmented virtuality, augmented reality using a device, right? And somewhere you have that mixed sense of mixed reality. Taking holograms, putting them into your space, taking the physical into the virtual into the physical, right? How many people have played with VR? Not played with VR like I played a game, but like made something for VR. Okay, how many people are thinking that they need to think about this? Right? It's really huge. And so if we looked at what you can do as a JavaScript developer, mixed reality with JavaScript, if you're looking for the HoloLens, there's HoloJS, which used to be holographic JS. And that's a toolkit you can use to start developing for the HoloLens with JavaScript. And then there's mixed reality, which is a framework built on top of HoloJS and abstracts it a little bit. So if you've used anything like Three.js, this will be just like second hat to you, right? And then if we looked at augmented reality with JavaScript, so has anyone played with the new iOS ARKit stuff that's been coming out? No? Okay, so you'll start to see AR. AR is everywhere. Tutorials, all the toolkits, people talking about it, all the sites. If you start to follow ARs, suddenly just had a resurgence. And so ARJS is actually taken from ARKit, and it's just compiled down. So it's from AR Toolkit compiled down for JavaScript. And so if you look at WebVR and the support for WebVR, a lot of the browsers are starting to support WebVR, right? Now you see Chrome doesn't support it, but you can enable it in flags, right? So it is there in an experimental way. And then, if you look at WebVR and what actually WebVR gives us, is it gives you two major things, right? One is stereo rendering. So it's that idea that you're getting those two depths, okay? And then positional tracking, so I know where the camera is, right? And so those two features alone is what's giving you WebVR. And on top of WebVR, there's A-Frame, which is a framework built to use it. Has anyone tried A-Frame? You can write a VR app in like 10 lines of code. Like, I might as well just be selling it right now. Super easy. Copy, paste, make it work. Oh, awesome. Look what I just did. Give me more money, right? Not saying you should do that, but saying you should do that, right? So A-Frame is pretty awesome. And so when you look at A-Frame as a development platform, it's abstracting a lot of those things, and really it's all markup too. So it's super easy to use and super easy to start playing with. So as a JavaScript developer, you actually have quite a few options in that space, right, for that 3D space. You also have the libraries. If you're looking at 3.js or Babylon.js, to start playing with those kind of loading models and seeing them, visualizing them, and creating that kind of 3D space, because WebGL, is widely supported for the most part. If we look at frameworks, there's a bunch of different frameworks you could be playing with. How many people have heard of processing, right? Okay, processing. Go do yourself a favor. Go spend 5 minutes, grab a coffee, download processing. Look at some of the sketches, openprocessing.org, where people share a lot of sketches. You have to realize when you go to processing is that this tool has been around for quite a while. This is before GitHub, right? Before we could all share our stuff quite easily. So people would upload their files, and they're called sketches, right? And so we have P5.js, which we have Daniel Schiffman. Has anyone heard of that name? Okay, I think it's Coding Train, maybe, or I don't know. Correct me if you know. He does something on YouTube. Every time he teaches a class, it's amazing. You're going to learn something. It's just awesome. And he works with this library and this framework. And this framework is often seen as like an experimental playground kind of framework, but you can do a lot with this framework, right? There's also Sketch.js. Sketch.js is actually created by, his name's Soulwire. I only know people by their usernames. It's weird, right? Someone did that to me the other day. Hey, BitChute Codes. I was like, he used to work at Google Creative Lab. He used to work at Fantasy Interactive. I think he now works at Spotify. And so he created a real simple kind of little library that you can use, you can get up and running, and just writing out sketches. And you'll see that word sketch come across a lot. Because you're not building an app, you're not building an infrastructure, you're spiking out or sketching an idea, right? And so a lot of these frameworks abstract all those kind of common things you might want to do, draw something, load something in, analyze something, and it just abstracts those things out for you. This one's new to me, and it's called Gibber. Has anyone heard of this? Okay, so in the browser, it's usually based on audio, and you can real-time write your JavaScript, and it will adjust and adapt, and it's kind of like a fun little tool to play with. And so for this one, I thought was super interesting just because I'm right there, you change a couple things, and you immediately see what the results are. You don't need to spin up an infrastructure or your local server or anything. And you're starting to see those browser tools really come out, right? And so another one, has anyone heard of Glitch? Oh man, Glitch is your best friend. Okay, so Glitch basically gives you all the infrastructure for your apps. And we're not just talking JavaScript. Okay, so Glitch is the idea, it's a new platform that's out. If you follow Jen Schiffer, she works for them. And basically, if you're like, I want to write a Node app that's going to, go to Twitter and get the streaming API, and then it's going to do X, you can write it in Glitch. It takes care of all the infrastructure for you. So everything gets spun up for you. You're just writing in the browser. And then if you share it, people can take it and remix it, right? So you can start to learn a lot from people. And this is a great way to teach people how to code. It's a great thing that if you're having to do something very quick, like at a company day hackathon, you're not sitting there starting up a server and doing all the infrastructure stuff. And it's a great place to kind of look and just take a look at what's actually been done out there. There's one more I'm going to throw out there, which is going to make the person in front very uncomfortable. And it's Coding Math. Has anyone seen the Coding Math YouTube channel? Well, except for the guy who created it. By the way, your first video, Keith? Hi, I just wanted to put a face to the name. I was like, please don't. If you're interested in understanding a little bit more of the math behind it, and you want to understand how you can code math and make all these amazing effects, Keith spent tons and tons and tons of time making these tutorials. So can we give him a little? And they're really good. I don't give compliments easily, okay? They're really good. You just turn his voice off and you'll be fine, okay? Okay, so we also have in my area IoT and robotics. And IoT and robotics, when we think about IoT, we think a little bit of this, right? Do it, I dare you to! Just kill you. IoT is that big, vague thing right now, right? There's a lot of vague terms. It's an umbrella term, right? Internet of Things, tubes of stuff, right? And a lot of people, when they think of Internet of Things, they think of useless devices that don't really do much for you. And they, again, it's that whole just because you can doesn't mean you should thing, right? So with the Internet of Things, what most people are missing is that you're connecting things to the Internet. Yes, boom, check, right? But they're missing the data part. The data is really where the important thing is, right? Because any of these devices are coming out, if they're going to help you, they're going to analyze your data, take a look at your data, and give you any kind of feedback based on your data, right? And so the Internet of Things is an interesting one right now. And you see a lot of kind of useless things. One of the things that we're prepping this week, right when I get back, I'm running our second annual SumoBots competition. So I'll show you what that looks like. And SumoBots, if you've never ever, has anyone done NodeBots? Oh, come on, people. I'm going to get you all converted. It's the last thing I do. Okay, spend a day. You can build your basic introduction to robotics with Arduino, with Node, right? And then you compete. You put them in a ring, like they're SumoBot wrestlers, right? And you find out who can rule the ring. And we do this at work, and people get super excited about it. So let's see if this shows. This was last year's. I'm prepping this year, and this year we have twice as many people.
3, 2, 1, go!
Get creative. You guys like zebra?
It's the battery battle. Battery battle.
We had those guys cheat. They put cans on their items, so this year we're weighing.
This is the longest match right now.
This is a great activity to do like on a date or learn something new.
Put up a fight. Put up a fight.
Awesome fight.
Nice job.
So we're going to do the next one on Friday. I'll probably stream it live if you're interested in watching. I gave them different parameters. I'm going to have a weigh-in. Yeah, you're not going to put 6 cans of Coke on that machine. Yeah, I'm going to weigh you in. And the only other thing was like you have width and height proportion. So if you build up and it collapses out, that's totally up to you. So some people are building some really crazy things. A couple of things that I try to expose some of the people to is what they could be using JavaScript for. And so if you're looking at hardware, Johnny 5 is a great framework for working with almost all sorts of devices. It's not just Arduino or Raspberry Pi. It has support for a bunch of different devices. It's actively maintained. Very easy to use. So if you're familiar with Node at any point, this is a great thing. There's also Cylon.js, which is another robotics platform. And so you're starting to see these robotics platforms done in JavaScript. You're also seeing devices in JavaScript. So anyone heard of Node MCU or ES8266, I think? Don't check that. So this little device is about $9 US all together. Wi-Fi enabled, can run a server, right? And if you wanted to, you could actually work it with JavaScript. By default, it's Lua, but you could totally be using JavaScript with it, and working it with it that way. And it becomes one of the cheapest Wi-Fi enabled devices that you can get. There's also the Tessel, right? Tessel runs JavaScript on it, and it's a JavaScript-enabled device. So if you're looking to get into hardware and you're not sure, you don't need to start worrying about all these different languages. You can just leverage what you already have. There's also some really interesting APIs out there for you. And again, these aren't all practical things, and that's why I'm here. I don't like the practical, right? Web Bluetooth. And so you can start to see who supports Web Bluetooth and how you can connect something in the browser to a Bluetooth item. And there's actually a product out there that's Puck.js that does just that. And it gives you a bunch of little data in this tiny, tiny little chip that you could be using. Any of those things you want to buy, you can just go to Adafruit or SparkFun, and they'll totally have them, or Amazon. And there's also Espruino, which has Wi-Fi or the Pico. There's a bunch of different of devices that you can use. And again, it has a single chip for the board, and you're just using JavaScript, and it's very easy to get up and running with these devices. So your dream of lighting up your apartment with all the NeoPixels in the world can come true. Microbit. Anyone heard of this one? Microbit was from the BBC. They partnered with 29 people, and they built this little board. It does a lot of stuff. It has Bluetooth connectivity. You can do light sensitivity. It has little buttons. You can add servos, all sorts of stuff. You can program this in the browser using JavaScript, Python, or Blocky, which is, if you're used to Scratch, it's kind of like that. And this was created so that every kid in the 5th grade could get this item, I think in the 5th grade, in the UK, and they would learn to code with it and grow with it, right? Because you might start off with a Node kind of block editor, and then you might go to JavaScript or Python, and then you might go to the other one, either or, right? And they gave them, so they kind of grow with them. We've been using these things a lot. They're super easy, super approachable. And so again, you can write JavaScript right in the browser. You just hit save, compiles it down for you, you throw it on the device. Show me more money. I don't know. And then one other thing I wanted to kind of just highlight, we were trying to work out this really crazy Wi-Fi connection thing between devices, and then we moved to Bluetooth, and then, sometimes, you have you have the most simplest solution in front of you, and you just don't see it because you overthink it. Anyone done that? Anyone done that? You can all put up your hand. We've all been there. I'm looking at you. Come on. And this is OSC, which is the open source or open sound protocol. Often you'll see this used with like Ableton or MIDI controllers, mostly meant for music. And we were trying to capture kind of like, drometer and all sorts of things from an item that was moving around position. And instead of like taking a device and doing it, we just shoved our phone in, put in an app, used the protocol, and then wrote a Node app to capture it, right? So sometimes the simple solution is right in front of you, and it only takes 3 days to find it, right? So I'm going to leave you with this link. It's full of stuff, full of tutorials, everything I talked about. You can check out all those things. I didn't want to go through all the demos because I would spend all the time demoing. So you can go through all that stuff. That's why it's called JS Stuffs. Thought ahead. And take a look at any of those things that I've mentioned in this talk. And I think at that point what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave you with a burrito and say thanks.